more gay. No,
yeah, be more gay, be more gay. That's our song. Be more gay.
It's good.
Hello and welcome to Xena Warrior Podcast. Woo!
Yay! So excited.
Yeah.
Very self-congratulatory.
I know, it's a little weird, but whatever. My name is Vera, and I am joined by my self-congratulatory co-hosts, Katie.
Hi.
And Livy.
Hi.
And we're so excited because this is the last podcast of season 1.
Yes.
The last episode.
This is very exciting.
So we're kind of can't believe it.
That means we've done 3 months worth of podcasts.
Yeah, but don't say it like that. We don't need a measurement of time.
Yeah.
Feels like we've been doing it forever. For a week.
Yes,
Both at once.
Exactly. So, yeah, today we're talking about 123, Death Mask, and 124, Is There a Doctor in the House? To finish off season 1. Mm-hmm. Should we start, or is there a first thing? I don't know.
Well, I feel like if you take these 2 titles together, Death Mask and Is There a Doctor in the House, it sounds like it's about plague.
Oh, no.
It's a special 2-parter about bubonic plague.
Ugh.
They never really had an episode like that, huh? Or did they? Some kind of weird... This was their... doctor
so.
was their weird hospital.
They had that episode with the foot rot.
Oh, yes.
Our favorite episode.
You're right.
That's maybe as close as it gets.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember any plagues.
All right. On that note, why don't we begin? So, Death Mask, written by Peter Allen Fields and directed by Stuart Main.
Who are those people?
Yeah.
No clue.
Okay.
And this is that kind of episode, isn't it?
Yeah. They just picked 2 randoms off the street and were like, would you like to make an episode of Xena?
No. All right.
Okay.
That's unfair to Stuart and Peter. So
Sure.
They're very lovely, probably sort of gifted gentlemen. And we got an episode. Okay. They got paid for it, so we can be mean to them.
I do think this episode, while totally being a failure, is very instructive for how to destroy an episode of Xena.
Wow. I thought you were going to say how to create your very own death mask.
What?
Like your very own...
Out
like
of paper mache?
Yeah, exactly.
And they were kind of fun.
You
Like, I
know,
would
party
wear one.
store, put some bling on it. You know, this episode had a lot of bedazzling.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's the one
Cool.
thing that I noticed.
Well, that's nice.
Well,
Arts and crafts, the episode.
they say you can't gild a turd.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
no.
Jeez. Wow, you have
Gross.
some
Gross.
opinions about this episode.
Well, listen, for me, as an overall, broad perspective on this episode, I find sometimes when there are whatever episodes of Xena that are maybe not as good as others, you're just like, okay, that was an episode, and I sat here and I was usually entertained anyway because it's Xena.
Well, our thing is that there's always, even if shitty episodes, always have something good in
Right,
them.
well, that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
to,
Oh,
sort
sorry.
of, in the sense that this episode has stuff good in it, but the reason that I feel like I hate it so much in the way that I do is precisely because it is focused on big, important things that are interesting and just makes them be not good.
Because it's about
Yeah.
the brother.
How do you make
Exactly.
Xena's origin story boring?
Yeah.
I mean, that takes real work to
So
be that terrible.
Yeah.
But not to mention that even if they didn't intend it this way, the way that it aired was, I think, very specific in that they showed the Callisto origin story back to back with this. So it's like even worse in a way.
And it also became the default season finale for season 1
Yeah.
because Is There a Doctor in the House was delayed by the studio.
Dumb reasons.
Yeah, for being too violent. So this was technically the aired season finale of
Woof.
season 1.
Wow, ending it with
Yikes.
Taurus going home to visit his mother. It's like the last beat.
Yeah.
The most important character
Not
of
with a
Xena,
bang,
Taurus.
with a whimper.
So it's just a bummer because, yeah, we'll get into the issues at hand, but I think that that's what makes me sad about this one is that there's so much interesting stuff going on that could have been so good, but it's not.
It's fascinating because on paper, all of this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I think if you came up to me and said, do you want to see an episode of Xena where you meet the warlord who attacked Amphipolis and, created her,
Right.
and, meeting a brother who was involved in that conflict
family.
and finally getting insight into, who Xena was before she was Xena. These are huge mysteries that power a lot of the show.
Yeah.
And the answers are so uninspiring.
So we loved it.
So good.
Yeah. All right. moving
Well,
on.
I liked the beginning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought when we were talking about like each episode has like a cute thing, we'd be like, oh yeah, this is the one that Gabrielle is like, yeah, the arrows, I can catch them.
She's
Yeah.
super cute in this episode.
Yeah.
I think it's more noticeable than usual because everything else is so kind of like turgid and awkward that when she comes in, it's like this like beam of light.
Aw.
Aw, yeah.
Yeah.
It starts with Gabrielle kind of marveling at Xena's ability to catch arrows,
Ah, yes.
which I thought was interesting because Xena's like, you have to listen to it with your body, which is very foreshadowing of the series finale, where there's more lessons like this that Gabrielle implements.
Yeah. And also to kind of that period when Gabrielle discovers yoga. This feels very new agey. I'm listening with my body.
Well, so a guy fires an arrow and she happens to catch it in her staff.
Yeah.
Now, do we think this was an intentional?
Oh, 100%. But I think listening with your body, accidents become intentional. It's one of those things where, like, it's instinct. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. It reminded me of the season 2 episode where A Day in the Life where she manages to hit Xena with the
yes.
staff, or does she? You
Or
know,
does
you
she?
just don't know.
Is this so? This fight goes on for what feels like 15 minutes. It's like a really long opening
Of Xena fighting
sequence
some
of fighting,
goons.
right?
Yeah.
Is this where Gabrielle's she's holding her own, and Xena's like, well, you kind of don't need my help.
Yeah, so Xena fights a goon, and then Gabrielle's fighting her own goon, and Xena finishes with hers and runs over to help, but then kind of sees that Gab's got it,
Yeah.
and she makes like a little proud face. It
Yeah.
was really cute.
Yeah, she just kind of stands by watching and
I
saying, that's my girl.
She does it a couple times in this one, and that's another cute point to the episode.
It definitely is demonstrating Gabrielle's continuing evolution.
In Xena's eyes, you mean?
Yeah. And it also has a moment that kind of harkens back to earlier Gabrielle. Xena tells her to get back, and you see her before she is attacked by that one goon. She's standing there mock fighting with her staff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, kind of also harkening back to Greater Good, where she was in the bushes, also kind of mime fighting along. So I like that we see these glimpses of old school Gabs, but then she can be pulled into the fight and totally holds her own.
Yeah, so these goons are wearing these craft store masks, as mentioned, and Xena's like, oh my god, I've seen this mask before.
Yeah, there's a flashback,
Oh yeah, the one
tiny flashback.
really bad flashback.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a flashback to, like, the making of Xena, why? Why would it be something so brief and so utterly pointless? A different guy in that same
A really
mask.
unimpressive guy.
Yeah.
As the guy who attacked Amphipolis and, caused...
Yeah, and I'll say that I actually thought the design of most of those masks was really stupid. I thought the only character who had a cool mask was Malik.
Yeah, well, Malik was cool, I have to say. He was a goon who stuck out to me. Like, every time he said Cortez, I got, like, this flashback to Tiny Me. Like, that was... I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was around Callisto and that was like, such a vivid thing. But I could just see him saying Cortez all the time.
And you were like, ah.
I was like, oh, that guy!
He's really fun, and I feel like he could have been like our resident, like, amusing villain this episode,
He
if
kinda
not
was.
for actual Cortez.
Well, he was real bad at acting and everything, but I think Malik was pretty good.
Can we call him Terrence Malik?
Oh.
Sure.
Only if there was extra gratuitous shots of tree leaves.
Not in this
I
episode.
don't think so, yeah.
TJ might
Yeah,
have
exactly.
provided.
If only this was directed by TJ. Xena and Gabrielle fight off a bunch of these masked goons raiding a village.
There's a little girl who's
Of
in
course.
danger.
This is like
Standing around.
that's the standard village fight situation. There's always a little kid who's like, "Oh, I gotta go stand in the middle of the road for no reason." Oh,
It reminded me of the little boy in Callisto.
Yeah.
But that little boy, like, I read him as being a stand-in for Callisto herself, and in a way also for Xena. These, lost innocence in a village fight.
I read him as like a shittier version of that kid from the pilot who learned to be a con man.
Lost innocence. See, that kid. It's really tragic what happened to him. But yeah, this little girl, Leah, I couldn't help but think of Callisto, since we've just gone through the episode Callisto.
Okay, I mean...
Gabrielle saves this little girl from becoming another Callisto.
But she was going to get killed.
That's
so
true.
It's more
She'd
like
be dead.
she's saving her mom, Sarah, from becoming another Xena.
Right. Yeah, that's how it is. Totally intentional.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. This episode is everything. So good.
But that was nice. That was nice of Gabrielle.
Yeah. My frustration with this whole kind of village rumble is that there are apparently a lot of characters involved in it. You have Malik, you have Taurus, you have that lieutenant that fights for the king. They're all apparently in this scene, but you can't tell them apart.
Yeah.
In part because they have masks, but I think it's a larger problem of the editing and the directing, where suddenly the dust settles and you kind of see them all riding away, and you see the king's lieutenant saying to Xena, "You fought well." And I was like, "Who are you? Wasn't she fighting you?" Like,
no, did they actually
spatially
show... Wait,
confusing.
did they actually show Taurus and Malik fighting at that point? Because I feel like what you saw was Xena fighting masked goons, right? And then she fought them off, and you see our, hero goons, Malik and Taurus. They're like, we gotta leave! Because I don't think you see these guys
Maybe
like
you don't.
in the fight.
But I think that in itself is a problem. There is a sense that these characters aren't being introduced in a natural way over the course of the action sequence. So it means that the action sequence is kind of doing no work.
Right.
And then suddenly, like, 3 different major characters are thrown at you in a row, and you're like, who are you, and what role did you play in the scene we just saw?
Well, the King's Men intentionally arrived 15 minutes late with Starbucks. I mean, that was like the whole point of Cortez / King, is that he always sends them in after the guys are done raiding. So, and you can tell them apart because the King's Men have like frilly outfits and super short skirts. Like that main lieutenant's skirt was like extra short.
That's how Cortez likes them.
All right.
As the goons ride off, you see one take off his little mask, and there's a super dramatic zoom in, like super dramatic.
Most zoom. Like a zoom where you watch it and you're just like, please don't ever do zooms
Zoom like this
this
again. Well, it does 3 times.
Yeah, they're all over this episode.
Yeah.
We've already had the one where Xena saw the mask. And, I'm okay with a zoom into Lucy Lawless's face. Because
Sure.
she has a face that can support a dramatic zoom. But that dramatic zoom into Taurus's face...
That's a very good point. If your face can support a fairly cheesy dramatic zoom, then it's definitely forgivable. If you cannot support it, do not do it.
Well, Taurus's face really cannot support it, that or his haircut. But
Oh, God, the mullet again!
listen, I don't know if this is an appropriate time to discuss Taurus. We haven't quite... I mean, I guess this is his
This is his
introduction.
introduction.
He dramatically whispers, Xena. And then, what does that mean? I guess he knows her. But
I mean, it's meant to make you think, oh, he has some kind of vendetta against her, which actually he does, but not in that way.
Okay, well, so my whole thing with Taurus and how he looks is that he looks 100% like brunette Hercules.
He looks so much like Kevin
And
Sorbo.
it makes me question Xena's attraction.
Oh, interesting.
So that really threw me off.
But he's worse than Kevin Sorbo.
He acts a bit like Kevin Sorbo. I'm sorry for fans of Kevin Sorbo in the audience, but he does a very specific thing with his voice where he talks normally and then he gets really angry. And that's it. Those are the 2 modes in which he can talk. Sort of soft voice and rage. And it goes from one to the other on a dime. And it totally reminds me of Kevin Sorbo delivering his famous line, "Disappointed!"
Yep. That's the number 1 acting of this guy for sure.
Interesting observation. Vera.
Mother Hercules, you. Never forget.
No Taurus in there.
That's because Taurus doesn't exist after this episode.
Yeah.
Or before it.
Or before it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, it is just awful. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Taurus wants to meet Cortez. That's, his whole plan. I don't know. I guess, we don't know he's her brother yet, right?
No.
No.
Okay. When did we find that out?
Soon.
When he confronts Xena and says,
Oh.
unless you want to kill your brother! No, he does not say it like that. But he may as well. He may as well.
Well, he did, I was a coward! He did that. Yeah.
They're all like that. There are about 6 of them.
We're doing Katie's favorite thing where we shout a lot into the microphone.
Yeah, you do it.
Okay, apologies for that. So, all right, so he wants to meet Cortez. And, he has a pretty good plan. He's, implanted himself into this goon gang and is trying to work his way up to get close to Cortez so he can murder him.
How long do you think he's been doing this? Is this
Not
what
long,
he's been
he's brand
doing
new.
the entire time that...
Dude, he already said he's a coward, so he just got the courage to join this gang.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure, they're like, you're so new, you can't meet
Right.
Cortez.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
All right, so then we do meet Cortez. That was exciting.
I just remembered the commentary when we were watching it.
Oh, yeah.
And I will not take credit for saying it. I believe Olivia said it.
But we all thought it.
What did I
that's
say?
true.
That he looks like a busted Joe Manganiello.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
No, you said that, which I could see for sure. And you were like, this guy's introduction is basically he's sitting draw me like one of your friends.
Oh, right.
It is the most hilarious pose in the world.
This is where the bedazzling again comes in. He looked like a bedazzled Autolycus because he had the green outfit, but it had all these
Vestiness.
yeah. It reminded me of his outfit, but with all this extra bling and pizzazz.
I guess that goes with him kind of being a bit of a letdown when compared to his own reputation.
Yeah,
I guess
there you
that
go.
recalls Autolycus. So there's a scene between Cortez and Malik. And, it's so cringy. I think one of Cortez's first lines is, "No need for my right arm to kneel before me."
Yeah.
And I wrote that line down because I feel like it really encapsulates kind of the terrible writing of this episode. Just, really awkwardly delivered exposition. Why do you even need to explain that Malik is his right arm? That's so clear. It's just, ugh.
Because we know Cortez is in charge of this game.
The same way Taurus always having to explain that he's Xena's brother. You're just no, we get it. Move on.
It's the fact that you never see him again or never heard of him. He needs to reassure the audience that he's the brother.
If you missed the first act, you need to say it again.
These are old school rules.
Yeah, it's very
so
old school.
it is kind of, unfortunately,
Well, this
the thing to do.
The old school rules do a thing to television, which is they really lower the IQ of a television show because every act has to remind you of what it's about, and it spends the entire length of runtime reminding you what it's about, and hence it's about nothing.
Well, this does introduce the fact that Cortez is the one who created Xena.
He's proud of it.
I created her. And then Taurus is revealed to be Xena's older brother.
Yes.
Was that the Zoom?
Yeah.
On her face.
On her face.
Yeah.
That's the one that was supportable.
And it was glorious.
Yeah. Sure. Real nice.
It's still pretty bad.
So they have a reunion. They're super awkward. And Gabrielle is doing her best to kind of kill the tension in the room.
Here's a highlight.
Gabrielle is cooking. We know she loves food. This is a great example. She has these birds, but she doesn't have her sister's 17 herbs and spices.
17 secret herbs and spices.
Because Lila invented KFC or PFC.
Yes.
And I was so
PFC.
disappointed. Yeah, I was so disappointed that when she said, what was the pieces of
Wing thigh breast.
Wing thigh
breast.
breast. And I was looking down when she said that, and I was sure she looked at Xena when she said breast, but she did not. And I was so mad.
Oh, well.
What a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I actually like the line where Xena says of Taurus that he likes drumsticks. This moment of quotidian intimacy between them. I would have liked more of that. This is what I want from
That's the thing.
Xena
There's
family.
a tiny moment that is nice that you'd think would be, it needed more of that.
Yeah.
For
Also,
sure.
later when Xena fights with the wet rags and says, "Remember this, Taurus?"
That was a cute moment,
Yeah.
and that was legitimately cute.
Yeah.
So Xena kind of wants to, talk it out with Taurus, and she sends Gabrielle away in this way. She's like, go feed Argo, right? And Gabrielle is like, what? Feed Argo? But he can eat anywhere, basically. And this is episode 23. And again, like, what? Argo's a boy here again. Like, that's crazy. Like, this is another instance of what the fuck with this writer, or anyone who didn't catch that.
Yeah, everyone was really having an off day
Argo
this
hasn't been a
episode.
boy since the first episode.
Maybe it's just one of those things where sometimes you like slip up and say like
Gabrielle thinks
when-
all horses are boys. Just like
all
no,
dogs.
all dogs are boys,
that's
and all
what I
cats
mean.
are girls.
Like, exactly,
Yeah.
like a slip up. But it's you can write it off as an accident.
But what about that entire episode where she was bonding with Argo?
I know.
She definitely knows the girl.
Oh.
Anyway, I was like really struck by that.
After this is another great highlight, as all the highlights for this episode for me are to do with Gabrielle, that I think actually make this a good pair with Is There a Doctor in the House? Because slightly later, am I skipping over something that's
this is where
important?
You're skipping the little arm shake that.
Oh, yeah. Well, here, you guys can talk about Xena and Taurus or whatever. But yes, when Gabrielle goes off to check on Argo, she walks by Xena, and if you look, she just slightly grabs her elbow in like a little supportive little elbow squeeze. It's adorable.
Great little moment.
Yeah. Oh, worth the whole episode.
It really is.
Yeah, so she goes off to feed Argo, and Xena and Taurus have their heart-to-heart, where we find out that, she's like disappointed at him for joining this gang so he could kill Cortez, right? And he's like super pissed at her because he's just super pissed at her for becoming Xena Warrior Princess.
Right.
Well, then it turns out that is all sublimated self-pissiness.
Yep.
Because
Right.
really he's just angry at himself for...
Well, because you're getting
Running
to
away.
the heart
Right.
of this, the undercurrent of this episode, which is this is an episode about Taurus and like his cares and needs and issues.
This is the stuff
Yeah.
This stuff should be so juicy. It should be.
Yeah.
It really should be. Someone could take this and maybe write a fic about it that's really good, but when you actually are watching it, it's just a bummer.
A lot of these episodes always involve, Xena like knows these people from her past, or like Xena did shitty things to them in her past, and like the through line of season 1 and the entire series is like Xena is atoning for her sins. But there could have been an entire episode about, like, the man who made Xena, not involving his brother or the man himself being so terrible.
It's okay. They'll make up for all this later by being good
I mean,
later.
yeah.
For me, like, all of this could have worked. I like the reveal that the brother was a coward and that's kind of motivating him, that he's, like, the anti-Xena who's now kind of flipped the switch and wants to be, like, murderous in a way that Xena has flipped her switch and now wants to be good.
See, this is where it's interesting on paper. That sounds great.
Yeah, but to me it feels like a first draft. Like all of these ideas are kind of put forward in the most blunt, low nuanced way as possible. Like, it's just very expository. Like even the scene between Xena and her brother, which should be, a really tense moment, to me just feels like, how can we explain to the audience what happened in that battle at Amphipolis? And that's it. There really is no emotional subtext.
Couldn't we have had this role of the family member who wanted to go with the villagers to the hills and escape? Couldn't that have been Cyrene? Like, couldn't we have had an established amazing character play this role? Like, we didn't have to create this brother, you know?
And he does feel like he's never been mentioned before.
Right.
Or ever
So
again.
you immediately have this sort of sense of like, who are you? And he keeps having to explain, I'm Xena's brother!
I did want to make a note before we forget that we wanted to point out one of the ways that he's tied to Xena as being related is their costumes.
Oh, yeah, that was a point.
That was a very good observation and something that the episode, it was doing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
He has these like gold hoop chain things on his leather outfit situation that when standing next to Xena, they're similarly dressed. I mean, not similarly dressed, but it looks...
You could see, like,
There's like
again, I go with my ballroom dancing metaphor where it's like the his and hers, but you guys have the same outfit.
Right.
Technically,
It visually...
in terms of scheme.
Like, that's what a costuming choice is supposed to, like, visually give you these things in a way where it's not something that you as a viewer are sitting around all the time going, I see what you're doing here, but you kind of subconsciously see it, and it ties
You
them
really
together.
see it in the scene where they're having the heart-to-heart, because the way that they're framed, he's in the foreground, she's behind him, so you kind of can't help but notice that both of them kind of match.
The pattern of the breastplate.
Yeah,
versus
and
those
and
hoops.
he's like blue-eyed and brunette, and so
He was clearly cast on the basis of his, I guess, physical resemblance to Lucy Lawless, because it certainly wasn't for acting talent.
Sorry, I hit our problematic jar. I don't think it needs any money, but maybe it's problematic. It's so bad.
I think you're hitting it in that moment was based on Olivia saying that this guy looks like Lucy Lawless in any capacity.
That was a problematic assertion. I apologize.
You reminded me of this quote from Lucy about this episode and that guy. So this is what she says: "That chap who plays my brother could take his tongue and shove it up the back of his nose through his throat and tickle his sinuses with his tongue. An extraordinary trick, and that's all I can say about this episode."
Wow.
Oh my.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we know how Lucy Lawless feels about Death Mask and this actor.
Oh, let's talk about it faster.
Yeah, we're
okay.
so slow.
Well, I just wanted to quickly say that Taurus's bangs come to a point.
Okay.
It's hella dumb.
As the rest of him is. So, okay, so I mean, then they have this, like, they start working as a team. And, oh wait, we're skipping over the great Gabrielle moment where Gabrielle refuses to be sent away to the village, under pretenses that she's gonna protect it, and she's like, nuh-uh, I'm staying with you, because I gotta protect you.
Mm-hmm.
I love, have you ever considered there isn't a safe time to be around you?
Yeah.
Right.
And it was really great, and this was another moment where Xena was super proud, her little face.
Yeah. It also is clearly tying into Ties That Bind, where she allowed herself to be sent away. And here she's like, no, I've learned my lesson. I don't leave you alone with family members.
Right.
We know that doesn't turn out well.
Right. And that also Gabrielle kind of understanding her role in a way, in that, Xena brings her to all kinds of dangerous places, but here it's more like Xena is sending her away from Xena, not from a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the brother and her have this plan where he's going to bring her to the camp of the goons, being like, look what I captured. And, she's counting on the fact that they're really gross guys, right? Which they are.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And here's more sexual violence, which is a thing we did not think was even in Xena. But it's all over season one.
It really is. And that's part of her plan.
She's very good at kind of manipulating men based on this expectation that they might rape her.
Anyway, good thing she's got that breath dagger.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, our Twitter friend Molly described it as the boob dagger boob flex, which I think is a great description of whatever motion Xena is doing there.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I don't know what muscles you flex to make that happen, but
It's just nice to think that basically Xena could even punch you with her boobs.
yeah.
Because she has muscles there.
Absolutely. She has muscles everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. And thanks, Gabrielle, for buying that breast dagger earlier in the season.
Really handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she takes out Malik after he's all, like, super gross at her.
Wait, is that when he walks into the tent, like, literally Nosferatu with
Yes!
his, like, hands out, like, I'm evil, I'm going
because
to
again,
attack
you have a situation that's, a serious situation, the rape threat, and so you have to, like, really dilute it with a Nosferatu kind of acting,
Goofy.
and lots of, like, exposing even here,
Yeah.
and then a funny line
Yeah,
from Xena.
Xena gets I forget what her funny line is, but she definitely,
Get to the point,
again,
something like that, yeah.
diffuses the
Yeah,
threat.
diffuses, and punches him, and
Yeah.
he's cool. I already mentioned how he's cool, but I really like his look with, like, all the face scars, and then how he has, like, the one weird eye,
Yeah,
and then, like,
this, like,
the
black
other-
eye.
yeah.
Black
Like,
iris.
yeah, that guy has been, like, punched in the face or, like, injured in
He
his
he
face.
has a history.
Yeah, and it's
Far
really
more
cool.
than Cortez, who
Oh my
just
God.
looks so stupid. To me, he just looks like he got his costume at, like, a party store. But
Well,
yeah,
he did with those masks.
He did.
It was a bulk order.
I also love that he has the messenger pigeons.
Oh yeah, that's
Just a
right. So
nice
that's what
detail.
Xena discovered. She's like, "That's weird. There are pigeons here."
But he seems to take really nice care of them, which, kind of undermines his ferocity.
So as she's doing this, Taurus and Gabrielle are hanging out waiting for her, and Gabrielle's practicing with her stick, and she's
listening with her body.
Yeah, she's listening with her body, and he's being pissy. And this is where you have that conversation where he's like, she's doing to you what she did to our villagers.
Right. Well, Gabrielle first is gushing about Xena, and it's really cute because she's like, she's amazing. And it's adorable.
I've learned so much from her about inner strength.
Yeah. But yeah, that whole exchange, again, another thing that should be super interesting and is important, but is coming out of the mouth of Taurus. Xena is doing to Gabrielle like what Xena did to their village, which was take all of the villagers, turn them into warriors, soldiers, and got them all killed. So that's a thing to keep in mind for the next episode. Yay.
And beyond. This is a huge idea in Xena.
Oh, one of the biggest.
One of the biggest. And I can't believe that it's first kind of explicitly introduced into the show via Taurus.
Yeah. Like,
he's so necessary to this whole show.
Yeah.
So Xena comes back and she's like, okay, the king has a spy in his palace. And then they go there and the king comes out and delivers, the king is the spy, because it's cartoons!
Yeah, there's so much like mwah ha ha ha
Yeah.
in the sequence. The sequence is actually inept for a million reasons.
One of which robe that he's wearing.
Cortez's robe. One of which is like his weird booby-trapped...
Booby.
His weird booby-trapped
this episode has
throne room.
We have descended.
I didn't think you could have a king who's more absurd than Sisyphus. But this guy is the pits. He has his like weird horse sculpture that shoots arrows.
Yeah.
If he pulls on an antler, a trap door opens, and there's a moment later in the sequence where Xena opens the trap door and like a whole bunch of goons, like lemmings, run into it. And, you know, they're like in a line. So, like, the first one goes in, and then the second, and then the third. And this, like, goes on. And this is, like, in a serious episode. It's, like, you don't even have the comedy music playing over this.
Wait, they played the comedy music when she did the towels.
The rags. And that was funny. There, the episode seemed to know that it was being funny. Elsewhere, it did not know.
Yeah, well, that's what, so this is where she does this really great moment where she's like, remember this, Taurus? And it's like these wet rags, and it's like, I guess the equivalent of like what you do in a locker room, like with the towel, like you hit him with the curled up towel.
Do we think Xena, like baby Xena, was doing this? Or do you think Taurus was hitting her with the
I
rags?
have no clue.
Who was doing this?
It's Xena, because remember,
You think Xena was like the bully in the family?
You know she is, because you know
dropped
why?
that girl out of that tree.
That's what I was going to
and
say. Taurus is the same as Black Wolf, where they introduce these characters being like, these guys are going to come back for sure. Look at Xena's past with them.
They're
And it's
so
like,
important.
dropped.
They keep saying how important they are.
Yeah, and like both those episodes were about like these ridiculous new characters that they created. So we know from Black Wolf that Xena likes to drop girls out of the tree. So here, of course, she would like
Whip
hit her
her
brothers with
brothers.
this, which is great. I mean, it is kind of believable. Like you have to, as the only girl, like she had to kind of
Be aggressive.
be aggressive. So.
and then she's also the middle, right?
Yeah, she's the middle. Yeah,
So she is the Jan.
Jan, oh no!
We knew Xena was the Jan, okay? It's been established.
Does she need glasses though?
No.
Okay, then she's fine.
Oh, I have a note that says Cortez is also wearing a single earring, and that's how you know he's stupid.
Oh no!
Your
I didn't
vendetta
notice that.
against earring.
I did notice his amazing delivery of the evil warrior, Princess Xena, basically, like as if there's a comma there. But
He
it's
had
not.
never seen the show, this actor. I did like his scheme. I liked that, just like Callisto, he's trying to reframe Xena's story so that she's still a warlord. In a better episode, this would have carried more emotional weight.
I thought you were going to say you liked his scheme where he collects taxes and does all that stuff.
Yeah, what do we think of like the overarching plot here, which is that Cortez is both warlord and king and is taxing his own people so that he can continue to protect them from himself.
I kind of like that, TBH, because it reminds me of the characters in a bunch of movies. There's a plot in The Contender and also in While You Were Sleeping where like the sort of bad characters are revealed to create a problem that they then themselves save for publicity and like
Emperor Palpatine in the Star Wars
Oh, there you
prequels
go.
basically does exactly that.
Those are boring. As is this plot.
not while you were sleeping.
I think my issue with, like, it is clever, and this episode in true fashion says, this is such a cunning plan. Aren't I smart? Aren't I a smart episode? And you're like, the amount of, like, asking the audience is maybe hinting otherwise.
That's right.
But it does create a situation where, like, you have these action scenes that are very low conflict, because you have the king's men fighting Cortez's men, and those are pointless skirmishes because they all basically work for the same man. And it's also just confusing.
Yes,
So there's
it's
that.
not great. I did like the scene with Taurus and Xena tied up in the basement. He asked her what it felt like to beat Cortez, and you know, she kind of goes in on her backstory about like didn't feel like anything, but I liked how that was a zoom, but it was like really slow, and it was shot with like a fire in between, so it was very Callisto campfire scene, harkening back to that.
Yeah, it's Lucy Lawless taking you on a flashback without actually flashing back. I liked it, but at the same time, this episode had so abused the zoom, the dramatic zoom, that I couldn't help but think of those other terrible instances of the zoom in this moment, which was in itself like intrusive, and I was annoyed. So it shows that even a moment like this that was well acted and relatively well scripted just didn't really have the impact that it should have in this very middling episode.
Well, we can all agree that we wish that those elements were portrayed in a completely different episode. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved it was an audio flashback. You could hear the battle as she said it, you know, and the acting was great. But yeah, I mean, surrounding it is this shitty episode.
Lucy Lawless does do a couple nice things in the way that she portrays this moment. Like, I love that her line, "I didn't have time to feel anything," which she says twice. It's one of those moments that she plays, she's realizing that right now. She's understanding, like, emotionally how damaged she was by what happened to her. And I also like that in her kind of, like, relish with which she describes this, she sounds a bit like evil Xena. It's very subtle. It's very carefully done by Lucy, but you can kind of hear like who she used to be in her voice during that monologue. It's great.
My next note is that Xena and Taurus do their special move to like beat the, you know, goons or whatever, and it's the same move that Livy does in season 6.
Sort of gymnasty.
I mean, it's like they flip each other over in a weird way, but it's a very specific thing that I just was like, holy shit, that's Livy's.
There's also that moment where Taurus and Xena talk about like the rules for killing, which again, really important conversation happening between, you know, with a character you don't care about in an episode that isn't very good, but does feel like it has huge implications for the rest of the show. This idea that there's a difference in Xena's head between premeditated murder and killing someone in the heat of battle or in self-defense.
Right.
And I think the show in different episodes has kind of different opinions about whether there's a difference between those two kinds of killing or whether all killing is corrosive to your soul.
Yeah.
Frustrating because this is Taurus and she just yells and we know he's not going to kill anyone.
He has so many insights, but he's so dumb.
Yeah.
Didn't he say at one point about Gabrielle, like she's brave because that's the way she is?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which is so
and
true.
Xena says she knows more about wisdom and justice than you'll ever know.
So many good lines, like important lines. And I did sort of watching this episode again, having seen the whole show, I was sort of getting excited because I was like, oh, I'm so glad this has been brought up in season 1. But then I was like, why is it in this episode?
Right.
No wonder I've forgotten about it. Yeah.
And so explicitly in the sense that they're straight up like saying all these things.
Which
that are,
maybe
like,
is part of why it's so bad.
Right.
Because they're just saying these
concepts
that have been subtextual that become important in much more sophisticated ways having to do with actual plots about them in which characters have different opinions, whereas here you really just have people pontificating in a way that is pretty inert dramatically.
Oh, at least Gabrielle's around. It was cute when she was playing with Leah.
Warlord Leah.
Yeah, and called her Warlord Leah.
See, that's how you know she's a Callisto analog. Now she's a warlord.
She's like so incompetent. She could never be Callisto.
Speaking of Callisto, there's a moment now where Cortez has the chakram. I couldn't help but think of her. There aren't very many characters you see hold the chakram.
Was he also fingering it?
Sort of. He was definitely touching it.
He was like, this looks like something I saw at that party store. It has a lot of jewels on it. I like. Okay.
But you know, he's meant to be an important character. This would
he's not.
Underline his importance, the fact that he gets to touch the chakram. But yeah, he's still an idiot. Xena hangs him on a hook, like
by his
coat,
underwear.
and you see his little feet kicking, and it's so infantilizing. And I'm just like, why is this big baby the big bad in this episode? It is so puzzling as a choice.
I mean, this entire episode is very puzzling. So, and as we mentioned, Taurus goes back to Amphipolis to see Cyrene, and that's like how it ends.
And Xena has this weird moment where she's trying to give him a message to give to Cyrene, and then thinks better of it. It was strange,
Right?
It was
Why
really
why
weird.
couldn't she give Cyrene a message?
I think because the writer of this episode like really doesn't know the true relationship between Xena and Cyrene at this moment.
Yeah,
How it should be.
It felt oddly as if the writer was like, I can't think of a message, so I'm gonna have Xena not be able to think of one, and people will think that's really significant.
Wait, I feel like we didn't talk too much about it, but before we move on, like, what did you make of Xena saying, you know, in that whole thing about the making of Xena, Warlord Xena, that she didn't have time to feel anything, and thus that's what made her be evil, quote-unquote, Xena?
I think it's about how Lysias was killed. And
Yeah.
she didn't really have time to process it in a correct way, so she instead was like, revenge, and then went crazy.
Yeah. As we go through, we have to keep track of the sort of Xena timeline of stuff.
Yes.
Because I feel like it's interesting to pinpoint these moments that go from that first thing, which was Lysias, to making her this bigger and bigger warlord, I guess.
Well, she
There's
mentions it.
there's other things that happen
Yeah.
too along the way. So
But right now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
I am keeping track of it just because it was so confusing when we were
Yeah.
rewatching it. But like right now it makes sense. So Cortez's men attacked the village. Lysias was killed because they decided to stay and fight. She saved the village, but then she said that she wanted to capture the surrounding villages as a buffer. And
Right.
so like
She
that's
knew
how,
Cortez would come
Yeah,
back.
and that's how sort of like it's starting. I love that. I do.
Yeah, but I think it's about trauma that she experiences in that moment. She like just doesn't have access to her emotions for the longest time, and that's the beginning of Warlord Xena.
on that note, should we start talking about, is there a doctor in the house?
Yes,
Yes.
talking about Xena and feelings.
Move on. Okay, here we go.
Oh my god.
124, season finale. Is there a doctor in the house? Written by Patricia Manny and directed by T.J. Scott.
TJ!
DJ.
Woo, woo.
He filmed this episode in 5 days.
Right,
Wow.
as previously mentioned, Callisto took 9, and his compromise was like, I'm going to do this one in 5. And that's crazy because normally it's 8 days for an episode.
I mean, 5 days is a work week. That's amazing that this
Yeah.
entire episode happened in a work week.
Oh,
That's way more work than I do in a work week. I think this was a very different outing for TJ, too. Previously, we've seen him in Callisto and Beware of Greeks Bearing Gifts, and these were very large-scale episodes, and, you know, lots of action, lots of giant sets, and here we have just the one set, because this is a bottle episode.
That's right. It's
basically.
our battle episode of the season. Yes. I like how it's done, you know. I do think that you could tell how, instead of crazy amount of camera setups or whatever, there's a lot of, like, oneers. Remind me of The West Wing. I don't know if The West Wing is on yet. The walk and talks.
Yeah, he still does a lot of his long takes. It's
Yeah.
not quite as noticeable as
Are you
in
saying
Callisto.
Aaron Sorkin
Stole
stole
this.
the walk and talk from Warrior
I mean,
Princess?
it wasn't quite
No,
walk
I'm
and
just
talk.
kidding, I'm just kidding.
They didn't have hallways here.
I'm just
There
kidding.
sort of was, though. There's an aisle in the middle of the temple, and there is a shot where the camera follows, I forget, 2 characters walking and talking down this aisle.
What was
Yeah.
just really striking to me, there was one moment, I think it was like Effany and somebody, and they just entered the temple, and the camera did a 360 around them as they said stuff, and then it kind of revealed the temple. And I was just like, wait, how long has this been going? You know, I didn't clock it, but I was like, has this shot been going for a while? You know, And if you get those right, man, you get a lot of script done. So it's kind of, fast.
One of my favorite things about TJ is his use of space, the way he really cements down where you are within a set. And he gets lots of opportunities to do that with this temple. You really know that space in and out by the end of the episode.
Yeah. So let's set up the episode. It's Xena and Gabrielle, and they're going to Athens. And Xena knows a shortcut, which is through this forest. And Gabrielle wants to go the southern route.
Yes, she does.
Because there's a war going on between the Minoans and the Thessalians.
Yes.
And it's a civil war, apparently.
Which is Ares' favorite form of conflict.
Of course, that
Of
bitch.
course it is.
Yeah.
Senseless, brother against brother. He lives for that shit.
Yeah, I mean, and then later they were kind of revealed that it's a lot about religious oppression. I forget now.
The Minoans want to practice a different form of religion. We're never told what it is.
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions. The temple it's a Thessalian temple to Asclepius. So
that's Greek.
Traditional Greek gods.
Right.
I'm not sure what the Minoans are doing.
Okay, so they're the ones who want to practice something else. And the
Yeah.
Thessalians are traditional Greek religion.
So we're told that they're fighting over this little patch of forest, and it seems utterly pointless. Why do they need this one little section of forest? And it reminded me of that bit in Hamlet where Norway and Poland are fighting over the little patch of earth. And I actually even wrote down the lines. I see the imminent death of 20,000 men that, for a fantasy and trick of fame, go to their graves like beds, fight for a plot whereon the numbers cannot try the cause, which is not tomb enough and continent to hide the slain. Thank you.
Great job.
This episode is really feeling the anti-war sentiment and
Right.
just the utter pointlessness of battle.
For sure. It had a
Was there an
message.
element to this tiny little strip of land would control access to getting somewhere? Basically that's
probably
it.
to Athens.
Yeah, to Athens.
I mean, it does seem important in
Or
that
somewhere.
nobody wants to go via the southern route. But at the same time, you see that bit of forest, and it looks like every other bit of forest. And TJ does a good job of just kind of portraying the nightmarishness and the claustrophobia of that little bit of action. It's the only action in the episode.
Do you think this had to do with what was going on in the 90s at this time? Bosnia conflict was happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was before, after, or during, but I can't help but think of that stuff now.
Definitely, it was on the news a lot at
Yeah.
this point.
This is a story I think that is just continues to be relevant at all times.
Yeah.
Whenever
Well, because this is an eternal story.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate, horrible, eternal story. Yes.
But then also Xena likes to put in centaurs and human ladies to make further allegories.
Do you need a coin for the?
Well, we're
for
on the
jar?
part now where they find Empany, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
she's under some straw where she's
She's
been hiding
hiding.
for 3 days. Maybe.
Yeah, it's she has a horrible head wound, and she's super pregnant, guys. Guess what? She fucked Fanties.
Yes,
and
please.
they have a baby.
Can we just sidebar? I don't want to know how that works.
Fanties is a centaur, if anyone forgot.
I can't even get a visual in my head. I was like, the visual is horrible, and I was like, there is none. I literally cannot see it.
So, guys, I've tried so hard with the visuals in my head. I've come up with every possible position, and just none work out.
Anyway,
It's
I
impossible.
support their love. He's dead now.
Yeah, poor Fanties.
Shit
yeah.
hit the Fanties.
Oh,
No.
I'm just gonna put a problematic coin in there just for that joke. All right. So she's been hiding there, and they find her and take her to the Temple of Asclepius, which is the Thessalian temple.
Right, and they had been on their way to Athens because it was a more tolerant city.
That's
so
right.
at this point, it's like their relationship, once I guess they wanted to have a family and such, they had to go find someplace else to be because
The Amazons
No.
or the centaurs did not want that shit.
yeah.
And this is some kind of allegory for American race relations, we think.
Let's say yes.
There it goes.
Okay. That's all that needs saying.
I did find it cute how she was like, we're going to Athens because they're more tolerant.
Yeah.
I had a feel, I have to say.
It's sweet. I mean, Effie's life is hard, and she's kind of been expelled from her own sisterhood, which we know is really important to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, big cities.
We should talk about the introduction of Marmax, the other major character in this episode.
He's Matoan. He's a general. Who is he chasing?
Some random Thessalian.
Yeah, so like a random Thessalian kind of comes upon them, and immediately the Matoans are like, kill him, and Xena's like, no.
No, guys. No.
She basically throws a shocker and then kind of grazes this guy Marmax, and he like falls, so that guy's saved, blah, blah, blah. She ends up taking him with them to this temple. Mm-hmm. So you have this representation of the other side, and he's gonna learn all these lessons.
Right. Marmax's actor was very good, I thought.
Very strong
gravitas.
actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gravitas written in every smoke line of his face. Yeah.
He never finds out that it was Xena who wounded him. Maybe that's
Interesting.
understood between them at a certain point. That's part of his respect for her.
I did want to also mention that there's a lot of handheld camera.
Tons all throughout this
Yeah.
episode, in the battle scene that we've just talked about, but also once you get inside the temple, it's all over the place as they're doing their medical procedures. You get a lot of these tight close-ups of people that are just a little bit jittery to like raise that tension.
But also handheld is
very
another,
frantic.
Yeah, it's very frantic. It totally works for the story, but also it's another time-saving technique.
TJ.
That's true. Save
TJ
on
knows.
tripods.
Yep. TJ knows what he's doing.
And it also, to me, feels very, like, this entire episode, it's very odd to have a whole episode be a series of medical procedures, unless you're ER or Grey's Anatomy, I suppose.
Well, no, unless you're ER, which
Yeah.
is becoming very popular on NBC, which is the parent company. I mean, this is Universal, so it's all connected.
So this is Xena's take on ER.
It is, yeah. I have this TJ quote. He says, when we were shooting this episode, my feeling was that we do nothing gratuitous but show what Xena is doing with the same amount of blood and gore and factuality as an ER episode.
But the network had an
just was
issue
like,
with
nope.
this.
Yeah.
And as we previously said, didn't air it until like the middle of the summer. When everything was in rerun.
I do wonder if it's because, like, so ER was on at like
10.
9 or 10.
That
10
might
or 9 Central.
yeah.
And-
Sorry.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
So, and that's a very specific, like, adult time for watching
Right,
drama.
You're right.
Watershed.
Watershed.
Yeah, and this is like a syndicated show that maybe
that's
kids
it.
watch,
You're right.
so-
That's actually the point. Yes. that is it.
But
That's
their
the-
main problem, which was, the biggest thing that they had to cut out of this episode was Xena cauterizing a wound.
Yeah, not a
which is
centaur
not-
baby.
Yeah, they showed that full blown.
And that was maybe my least favorite shot of the entirety of Xena Warrior Princess.
What's what?
The centaur baby being like lifted up. Like I just cannot.
Those little, like, ropey legs coming
gross.
out of...
It
was really gross.
We'll get there. We're going to describe it in full detail for you, audience.
But what's interesting to me about the whole decision to structure this episode around these medical procedures is I feel like this isn't something you would see in kind of a fantasy story about a hero. You're used to kind of just seeing these in little bits and pieces. Like, oh, okay, it's time for Xena to demonstrate how caring and good she is by quickly bandaging a wound. And that's like a few minutes, and you probably cut away to other characters talking and then come back to Xena being like, okay, he's fine. To me, the fact that TJ has made this decision to leave the camera on each of these guys so that you really see like the physical and emotional cost of war and then the physical and emotional pressure that these life-saving people are under. I think it really underlines that whole anti-war statement of this episode far more than any silly kind of soapboxy dialogue ever could. So I think this episode is very brave in stripping down its action to the point that all that you're watching are, the costs of war.
Yeah, and it's great that, they set up Xena's field medicine throughout the series, and you just sort of get, like, this is a temple of Asclepius, right? So you're introduced to the priests of Asclepius, Galen, this, like, older one, and then, like, two apprentices Hippocrates and what was the other guy's name?
Democritus.
Right. So that guy's boyfriend of the week. For Gabs.
Hippocrates doesn't count as Xena's boyfriend of the week.
I think Whoosh called him her intellectual boyfriend of the week.
That's nice.
Yeah, because he was like really into her skills.
He just wants to write down everything she says.
I cannot believe. All right. We'll get to it, but we must chronicle Xena's inventions in this episode and her contribution to the field of medicine.
For sure.
Yes.
But I was going to say that I really love what you see is kind of goes with Xena's whole character. I mean, the previous episode, we talked about like Xena's origin story with Amphipolis and being attacked by the Cortese and everything, but like at some point I would say she was just like a normal girl, probably worshipped gods and did all the things that they did in their town, but like that attack that created Warrior Princess, created this person who just is completely like hates gods, also, her deal with Ares and everything. And she just like relies on being human and doing everything she can like in the moment.
Yeah, she's very rational, you feel. Like this episode kind of boils down to this conflict between these men who worship their gods and believe that good worship will save people's lives, and Xena, who's just so practical and says, these are the things you can actually like physically do to save a life, and you should do them. And those are hard choices to make, but you have to make them, and that's what life is like. But then, of course, later, Xena will kind of act out against her own rational philosophy, which is very satisfying to see.
Thoughts on the boyfriends of the week?
Well, Democritus has the floppy hair, which is how you know that he's Gabrielle's type.
Yep, for sure.
They're fine. They barely make an impression. I feel like it's easier to talk about their names and the meaning of their names than anything these characters do.
They kind of exist as historical figures more than characters.
Yeah, which in a way is a great kind of commentary on the whole concept of the boyfriend of the week, which is it's a prop, They're literally just there to tell you, how great Xena is, how beautiful, thoughtful, and pure Gabrielle is, and they do their jobs well, and you're like, thank you, boys. All right, now move over, like the girls are talking.
No, it's great. It's great that Xena's the one who invents all the medical techniques. Not, Hippocrates just writes that shit down. I mean, he gets the credit for certain things.
He gets the credit for it, just like all the other men who write down the stuff Xena does. Of course. Should we talk now about the various procedures that Xena invents?
Oh my god, let's list them all.
So she did the trach first.
Tracheotomy, surely she must
She's
have
already
invented.
done that.
Now, I am no expert on the history of medicine. Intubation?
She did intubation, yes.
Yeah. I am wondering when people started amputating people's limbs.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
If any of our
did she
listeners
invent that? It seemed like in the episode she kind of invented it.
Well, she certainly knew the difference between, she knew gangrene.
Right.
She definitely knew that.
Right.
I feel like amputation probably, the rake, has been around before Xena.
I mean, definitely her insistence on, having, tools for sterilization. That she probably invented sterilization.
She, absolutely invented.
When did she mention sterilization?
Well, she wants, hot swords and wet rags. She's very careful about cleanliness. My favorite thing to note in this episode is just all the different articles that she asks for every time. A hollow reed, cobwebs.
The cobwebs made me laugh so much.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can do cobwebs for gauze.
I think you can.
There's so many. Why do they have so much cobwebs in their temple?
Well, I don't know. Well, they did have real gauze.
They're not into cleanliness. That clearly was something Xena taught them.
And then also, of course, CPR, the most important.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And not just any CPR, the old dramatic.
Sexy CPR.
Yes.
Television CPR.
Television CPR.
The best kind there is.
When you're not allowed to kiss your co-star, there's always television CPR to the rescue.
Yes, the kind that makes the entire world not realize what CPR actually is and does and its purpose. But
thank you,
anyway,
TV.
Thank you. We are happy about it. Gabrielle and Marmax have that talk pretty early on, right?
She says the true meaning of life is to find peace in yourself and share it with the world, which totally made me think of season 4 Gabs.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of talk in this episode about Gabrielle's philosophy and her code of honor, that she doesn't kill even when someone has maybe killed her.
That's
which
true.
felt like an important point to make here at the end of season 1, that everything that Gabrielle has learned over the course of this season has created, a code of behavior and a life philosophy.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because I believe since the last episode, and the internet keeps track of these things, but Xena's kill count is 37 at this point since she reformed.
Yeah.
So
And Gabrielle's remains at 0.
0, right?
She tells Marmax this story of Liberius, which is not a name I've ever heard used for the character in the story who Artemis turns into a deer. It's usually Actian.
Okay.
But
I don't have an explanation for it.
I was puzzled by that. I don't know why the name was changed. If any of our listeners know.
Yes, let us know.
Yeah. But I love that Gabrielle's barding comes back in the same way that this episode is about, Xena's skill set, her field medicine. I like that the barding and kind of the bedside manner
Yes.
are once again associated with Gabrielle.
Yes.
Yeah, so she tells that story about Artemis to Marmax, and it was like super heavy metaphors for him.
Right. Yeah, that once you've lived among the deer, it's harder to hunt them. And I think Marmax gets the picture pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, they do a really nice job with this character. You definitely can chart his growth over the course of the episode. And when you get to that big moment when he decides to help a Thessalian, not just a Mitoan injured person, you fully feel it. You're like, okay, this guy understands that everybody's human.
But it's just so funny because it's as if Xena, like, from the get-go was like, I'm going to bring him into this temple and I'm going to show him and teach him, these lessons. And she does.
Yep. She took one look at this guy and said, he's a decent guy.
I guess we forgot to mention that this was kind of a challenge accepted from Xena. Because Gabrielle in the beginning was
Yes.
like, not even you can stop a war. And she's like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, and Gabrielle was like, sometimes I need to learn to keep my big mouth shut. And yeah.
But I think it's quite a startling proposition that rather than stopping the war by going out into the battlefield, Xena goes to the hospital, and that's where real change can happen.
Yeah.
I do feel the message of this episode is really strong and moving. And different for a show that is, violence is kind of the main event. You're there to watch Xena kick ass. So to have a whole episode that's like, I'm not going to show you any Xena kicking ass. She's even taken on a bet to, stop a war. And that sounds so badass, doesn't it? Well, she's going to do it while bandaging people up in a hospital.
She gave away her sword for a splint, like how we saw in The Reckoning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And she uses the pinch in a non-violent way this time to numb the pain of this guy who's getting his foot amputated. You see all of her warrior methods being used in non-violent ways.
So one thing that Xena has not yet figured out the invention for is just blood transfusion.
Right.
Because the guy who she intubates with the pig bladder.
And that's fine because she really can't know how to do that.
But it's interesting. I wish she kind of was like, you know what? He should have more blood. Look at all that blood pouring out of him.
Well,
Put
they
a
need to
reed in your
invent
arm.
how to tell DNA, blood types and stuff first, so you don't kill anyone.
Well, if you've ever
by
seen The
doing
Nick, that's a big plot point there. It's trying to figure out how to do blood transfusions without killing the patient.
Right.
Marmax keeps telling Xena that Gabrielle shouldn't be there because she's too pure, too good for this world, too pure.
I think that is another amazing thing about this episode is not that Gabrielle hasn't seen bad things. This is the end of season 1, so she's seen some stuff at this point. But she, in this, is really seeing in a horrific way what war does and is confronted with, I feel like, death in a particular way that she hasn't quite to this point. They're doing that whole who do we save sequence where they're working on a couple people at once, and Xena has invented intubating whatever, and as much as they struggle to save this one guy, they just can't. And I loved Gabrielle's reaction to that, where she's just like, we worked so hard, why did this happen?
But boyfriend of the week What?
I don't know.
That's quite a segue.
Well, he says the line, when a man is in pain, his soul needs healing just like his body. And so, like, according to Boyfriend of the Week, you know, that's what Gabrielle does.
Yeah.
And as we've seen as we will see throughout the show, I mean, that's what she does for Xena. She heals her soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my god, you guys. Keep going.
So this dude is like, oh my gosh, this village was attacked, and my little boy, he goes right in front of the road, and of course, where is he? I can't find him. And Gabrielle's like, oh, I'll do it. You know, so she goes out. We don't see this because...
Is this maybe a reaction to, you know, that moment where she was frustrated at not being able to save someone? This is her, you know, wanting that hands-on experience of going out and putting in an effort and seeing a return.
Yeah, or it's the fact that it's a little boy, you know. She already, you know, she had her hero moment from the previous episode.
Do we ever find out what happened to that little boy? She doesn't save him.
We don't know.
I don't know.
That's pretty grim.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know if they followed up on that.
No, I don't think they do.
Yeah.
I'll have to say, though, for the last, 10 minutes of the episode, I'm totally distracted by their stuff. They could have an offhand line about this kid, and I could care less. So.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, I kind of cut you off when you were talking about Marmax saying that Gabrielle shouldn't be in a war zone. Xena, I feel like, has just a good silent reaction face to that.
Yeah.
Because that is a continuing struggle about what it means for Gabrielle to be around Xena at all times. Yeah.
I mean, Gabrielle said in the previous episode, there is no safe time to be around you, which she was sort of saying in a lighthearted way, but you feel that is really the crux of the matter, is that every moment that Xena keeps Gabrielle around her is kind of, you know, that little bit of her innocence gets chipped away.
Yeah. And this is another episode where that kind of happens, in her being confronted with all of this horrific war business.
So Gabs goes out. We don't see it.
This episode is so serious. I feel just like we're all somber about it. Oh, it's because it's so good.
The ambulance pulls up at the ER and wheels in Gabs and this Baton soldier that she injured as well. So she's super injured.
Yeah, oh my god.
I love the detail that Gabs and the soldier she injured who injured her are both there, and Xena tries to save them both. I thought that was a really great
But I love Xena's kind of reaction, like, what the fuck? You know, Gabrielle was just here, like, what happened? You know, which is true. Like, that was such a shock.
Right.
Like, she was not expecting this at all.
It's also kind of a commentary on the bottle episode, because as long as you're inside the bottle, it's like, there's no fighting happening to you. You're there at the hospital. Like, why'd she go out of the bottle?
That's right, yeah. So it's super dramatic. And my favorite part, maybe... Well, besides, like, the big CPR section. But my favorite part is that Gabrielle tries to give her rite of cast to Effany.
Yes.
I was so struck by that this time, in part because we talked so much in Hooves and Harlots about Effany's character and how badly she was coveting that rite of cast.
Yeah.
That now here it is, delivered to her on a platter, and she says she doesn't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows how far Effany's come, and yeah, it's just really moving and sweet, and it shows how much Gabrielle, in her maybe dying moments, values Amazonian culture.
Right.
She remembers to do this.
Yeah.
Do you think she would have done that if, let's say, there wasn't another Amazon there? Do you think she would have grabbed somebody and just like, yeah, right, okay, it's you?
Well, I mean, no. If she had thought of it, she probably would have told Xena, who to give it to. Not
She
like
would have given it to Xena?
No, I think she would have maybe said someone.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
From
still
the
even
Amazons.
Effany.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure Effany knows.
You know, if her mind was working correctly to think of it.
Sorry I broke your staff.
It was right. It was clearly easier for her to kind of think to do it having Effany there.
At this point, the fighting is right at their door. And
They're getting catapulted, right?
Yeah, they're getting catapulted by the Thessalians. This is a Thessalian temple, remember? So it's interesting that it's friendly fire, actually, that they're caught between.
Is it because they know there's all these Matoans in there?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're trying to bomb the temple itself, but their Matoans right outside.
I see.
So they're caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, so part of the people kind of try to escape, and this is where Boyfriend of the Week for Gabrielle gets arrowed.
So all these sweet, innocent people, basically the sweetest and most innocent characters in this episode are all getting wounded because war is hell.
Right, and people who are very explicitly not, well, Gabrielle especially, aren't on either side of these fights, you know? And I think, like, Gabrielle is injured because people didn't know whose side she was on, so it automatically makes her the enemy, as they say later in the thing. Also, before we move on too far, we should just talk about how Xena shields Gabrielle from the debris when they're being attacked with by just leaning over her, and it's this high up shot, and it's cute. Okay, good day.
There's a beautiful shot. It's the opening shot of the scene where Xena apologizes to Gabrielle and admits that her pride might have killed her best friend. Wide shot, and you see the windows of the temple and these beams of light coming through. This episode doesn't have a lot of kind of striking visuals, I think, because TJ wasn't into that here. This is really an episode about, kind of being down and dirty, in the moment, this sort of sense of immediacy. Yeah. But here's a moment where TJ really stepped back and kind of let the beauty of this moment frame the two characters and kind of slowed down the action. It was very striking.
This is unrelated, but it's kind of related in the sense that this episode reminds me of the best episode of Band of Brothers, which is the one about the doctor. And they kind of do a lot of the same things that this episode has been doing, which is show you the horrors of war, obviously, and have a little love story, and I think it's Bestone. That's the one.
Yeah.
I guess it's, whenever you do a story about medics or doctors, there's no ideology other than helping people. And I think that's immediately really sympathetic.
Well, of course, here we are inventing the Hippocratic Oath, so
he's I'm going to make an oath
gotta
about
help
this.
Regardless. Yeah.
Okay, so Centaur Baby is happening. Ebony is in labor. Let's talk about the Centaur Baby.
What if we don't?
We have to.
Okay.
I like that Xena hypnotizes her with a candle flame.
His hypnosis.
Why does she do that when she could easily just pinch?
I don't
know.
I guess there must be some circumstances where you pinch and some circumstances where you need hypnotism. Maybe the pinch doesn't work with pregnant mothers. Maybe that just would have unintended side effects. I don't know.
No. All right. Fine. So she had to hypnotize her. I was just I don't know. The fact that she has this massive head wound plus the fact that she's in labor just made me really upset.
Yeah, it's upset. I mean, it's very upsetting.
She's also giving birth to a horse.
Yeah. Effie's a great character and just, just a lot of suffering right now.
Oh, no. Yeah, so, obviously they have to do a C-section. So that's another thing that Xena
obviously
does.
Why?
Xena names it after Caesar for some reason.
Oh, no!
Oh, my God. I don't know what's happening anymore. But, the idea that this baby could be born in a normal fashion is something to think about.
Her body tries.
Not very hard.
Well, because they cut it out mercifully. So, so this horse baby is lifted from her womb.
It's really graphic in a way that I wasn't expecting. Where
you're right. This is the most graphic thing in this episode.
And I'm not actually grossed out by it, but it's just quite a shot.
We're not saying that, babies and birthing is graphic at all. No. We're not saying that. Horse baby
it's
/
just
half human.
It's different.
Is different. And the way that they did it, the shot where they just lifted straight up and his little
hairy legs
are but covered in
it's just it's something else.
Cronenbergian.
Yes.
It must be inspired by The Fly.
Oh no, but it's the beauty of life.
Right. Yeah. I like the shot of the little baby centaur later.
Yeah, later he's super cute.
Super.
I just feel bad. I like this character a lot, and I feel very bad for her that she has to go through this experience because it does not seem good. But it all works out because Xena saves the day.
That's right. Ebony has a son. Yay!
My only note for the whole scene was absolutely not in capital letters.
see your capital letters from here.
I did love the detail that the baby's face and legs are streaked with gore.
Yeah.
Well, that's the jam. That's
yeah,
what they do.
This whole episode is very focused on realism.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason the episode had to be pushed back, like you're saying, was that they like went too far, I guess, with some
It was like cauterizing. It was like
so.
they were cauterizing his leg with a shield, a hot shield. And it's
Yeah.
like, that seems like the least graphic thing.
Right?
Cauterizing a wound is like so less graphic.
Well, it just shows how, you know, these like standards and censorship, it's so subjective.
Yeah.
Like clearly one person looked at this and saw like the steam rising from the cauterization and went like, nuh-uh, even though like centaur legs coming out of a woman's stomach. They're like, that's nice. What a good image.
Anyway.
Yikes. All right, so let's talk about the big dramatic moment with Gabrielle.
Right, that's my next note, which is also capital letters, and it says, yay, best part.
Absolutely, yes.
So this is clearly a fan favorite scene. This scene to me feels like it lasts for an eternity in a good way. It is only 3.5 minutes long. I did, which I guess is kind of long for a one scene, but it's so amazing. Let's talk about it for 3 hours.
Well,
Go for it.
I really love that the score quite strategically disappears.
Yes,
in
no
certain
music
moments.
whatsoever,
Yeah.
basically.
And all you have is Lucy Lawless, you know, and her panicked dialogue. And boy, is it panicked.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, I feel like I've watched this episode 100 times, but really I've only watched the last 15 minutes of it 100 times, so it was fun to actually watch the whole episode and kind of like be like, oh, contextually, this fits this way. This rewatch was the only time I kind of noticed that you pointed out that Marmax, I think, notices that Gabrielle is having trouble, like she's having some kind of issue breathing, and then so Xena goes over to her. I never really realized that happened. I just thought she kind of went over to her and was all of a sudden like, hey, you're gonna be fine.
She was having like seizures.
Yeah, well, that's before that.
Oh, I
this
see.
is like before that, and that makes Xena like go over to her in the first place. So then she dies, and this is some of the most. I feel like that's why why it's such a fan favorite moment is probably to me because Lucy Lawless is insanely amazing in this sequence. Just her acting is so desperate and raw.
And it's such a contrast with everything you've really ever seen Xena, the character, do. She's so stoic, she's so together, she's so commanding. We've talked about, you know, she's a rationalist in this episode.
Yes.
Who, you know, is telling all of these priests, you know, no, don't pray to your gods. No, don't get caught up in all the machismo of, you know, you're on this side, you're on that side. Like, just focus on saving lives. And, you know, also this idea that, well, some people you can save and some people you can't. But here she is sort of being a hypocrite as opposed to...
A Hippocrates. But yeah, going off of that, I think in Greater Good you wanted to bring this up because her reaction is, Katie, the complete opposite of how Gabrielle reacts.
No, it is.
In the same situation.
And it's so, to me, explicitly tied in Xena's relationship with Gabrielle. Gabrielle is her anchor to being the person that she is now, and what happens to Xena if she loses Gabrielle, you know?
Yeah. I think the easiest way that, you know, I can describe it is that she got used to Gabrielle. Like, she, at first, in the first part of the season, she'd be like, okay, you're following me, sure, whatever, I don't care.
She's the baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, gradually she, you know, accepted her and now is dependent upon her. So I love how just she loses her shit if she doesn't have Gabrielle.
Yeah. Whereas Gabrielle, as much as she loves Xena and needs Xena, you feel that she has this sense of kind of moral understanding. Like, she's self-sufficient. Like, she has her code. Like, if she loses Xena, she knows she can go off and do the right thing. And maybe that'll involve going into the woods and beating up a tree for a while just to get the feelings out. But in the end, she's going to be okay. And you really feel that in Greater Good.
By the way, that's the kind of thing that I think kind of from the previous episode, like, Xena never got a chance to do that about Lycia's, and that's why she became evil Xena.
Yeah, she needed her Rob Stark
She
moment.
needed that Rob Stark.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think, it doesn't exactly downgrade Gabrielle's feelings for Xena, but I do think it's important to understand that Xena needs Gabrielle more than Gabrielle needs her.
It's
and
kind of
that's
true.
what their relationship
Especially in
is.
this moment, especially, yeah.
And there's something just so satisfying about seeing that from a character who's so stoic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's just so devastating to watch. And I love the physicality of the whole thing. Nobody was trying to be gentle with anybody. Like, Lucy is just kind of like flinging Renee's head around and like trying to get her to wake up and like picking her up and just being very, very like physical and intimate. Obviously, another reason why it's a fan favorite. We can talk about the magic of TV CPR and how some folks find it interesting stand-in for kissing.
Yeah, some
That thing I learned from Chris Carter of the X-Files. But also, Rob Tappert made some kind of comment about it before it aired as well. That was a similar thing.
I mean, it's sad, but like also really funny that they were like, guys, there's gonna be CPR. There's gonna be mouth to mouth.
It's a way to get around the networks.
It is.
Yeah. They're like, what's wrong, network? You can't have a problem with somebody administering a life-saving procedure.
Right. I mean, and again, you have in the greater good, you have Gabrielle kissing Xena, and it's these situations that I don't think that I find any of these things. It's not sexy, but it's this thing that is happening that is suggestive of intimacy, which is fun.
Yeah, and certainly just an emotional apex of the season, seeing Xena reach this place and understanding just how important Gabrielle is in her life. I mean, it is incredibly romantic.
And guys, it's like so hard to talk about these scenes sometimes because they're so intense and crazy that I don't even know what to say about them. I just love the way Lucy Lawless's voice is too, when she's yelling at Marmax and who else is there? Hippocrates.
Yeah.
So
Hippocrates, she says, "You don't know anything."
Yeah, that "you don't know anything" is my favorite line, maybe, in that whole thing, just because of the delivery of it. It's perfect.
There's something very childlike about it.
Yeah.
She is sort of like looking up at all these people, almost like looking for help.
Right.
Which is not an expression you usually see on Xena's face.
No,
But yet lashing out at each and every one of them.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a very like cornered wounded animal.
Yeah. So she's doing all this CPR. She's begging Gabrielle, to not give up, that she's never run away from anything in her life, which tbhwoosh.org, several comments have now informed me has been ripped off from the James Cameron film The Abyss.
That line specifically?
Yes, the whole scene. Okay, fine, whatever. To me, it's kind of any standard desperate CPR scene is gonna be big and
there's
dramatic
this is everybody's
like this.
favorite scene.
Yeah,
the desperate CPR scene that kind of devolves into hammering with the fist on the chest.
It's gonna work.
And you know it's gonna work.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it really shows how well directed this is and how incredibly acted it is that I don't know if it even occurred to me while watching it that it reminded me of a million other
exactly you're so emotionally invested in this that stuff doesn't. This is another area of the Xena and melodrama area that I think that we've said something similar before. You have Lucy and Renee who can ground it in these really very realistic reactions and emotions that even though it's big and dramatic, it just feels intimate and scary.
I have to tell you, that Renee was very instrumental in this.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Because she helped Lucy with each take, come up with more and more greater emotion.
Right. And kept telling her to do more takes. Even though she didn't want to.
She didn't kept telling her that. The director's like, we got to do another.
But I think the very last take, Renee said, you should do this. And Lucy didn't want to. But because Renee said, you should, she did it. And it was a good take. And they used it.
I think in one of the Coffee Talk interviews with the two of them, they're talking about filming the scene, and there is a point towards the end of it where you just feel like she's just not waking up. She's just really dead. And Lucy was like, was that maybe TJ, like, not cueing you or something? And Renee was like, no, that was just me, just waiting a really long time to kind of milk the tension. So that's a great choice, to just make Lucy keep doing this stuff like forever, not knowing when she was actually going to wake up. So that's amazing. That's awesome.
And I love that it just goes on and on to the point where you kind of, along with Marmax and the others, are almost cringing at it. You know, like Xena's beating up on Gabrielle to make her wake up. Yeah. And there's some, I mean, embarrassing is the wrong word, but
I know what you mean.
There is something like you can't look. It's unbearable.
That's because you're seeing Xena in this state.
Yeah.
It is I mean, embarrassing is an interesting word, but it's just so she's naked, basically. Like, her emotions are naked.
So she's, like, so vulnerable, and it's all over her face. Yeah. Ooh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I really like how public it is, and that it's all men. Just a bunch of men standing around watching this and kind of saying, stop. Yeah. But also, like, not actually stopping her.
Anyway, guess what? Gabrielle's not dead. So she, as the episode states, makes the decision herself to come back to life, which she does, and it's great. Xena immediately just, like, picks her up and smooshes her, like, against her chest, which is so great. Again, in maybe the same coffee talk, or maybe a different one. I loved Lucy's comment that the weird angle kind of on Renee just, like, made her quote was like, you look really unwell. Like, and she does. She has this, like, expression on her face that, like, that girl just went through some shit. Yeah. She just went to some places. Yeah. And you can see it on her face. And she's like, whoa.
By the way, if you're like, I don't know if there's anyone out there who doesn't know about the coffee talks, but if you don't,
oh my God,
look them up on YouTube. Good. They are, like, hours of Lucy and Renee being amazing.
Yeah, well, it was their Creation Entertainment after every yearly XenaCon for 6 years.
I think there's 6 of them,
Yeah, they would do these really long interviews together that are amazing.
Amazing stories come out of that.
Oh my God.
I love that Galen comes in and it's just like, oh, you're Asclepius on Earth, a miracle.
Right, and he had kind of been the one.
Yeah, he's like the old fogey, like, priest
her
guy.
Harshest critic.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Who's very into the gods and whatever historically, I guess, was, like, combined medicine and philosophy more. But here he's kind of the guy running around going, like, the gods will save us. Yeah, to the point where then he says Xena is a god for performing this miracle. And Xena says it's Gabrielle who performed the miracle. Didn't ya?
Oh my God.
So cute.
And gives her a little kiss.
Yeah, forehead kisses are, you know, to not be unremarked upon. There are 2, I believe.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, the episode ends with them kind of walking out of that temple.
Well, first she talks to Hippocrates, Xena. And
that's right. That's where he's like, I'm going to create an oath, I think.
Pretty much. I mean, I kind of wish it didn't have the one, like, I'm going to write an oath. Because you understood right before that that's sort of what they were talking about. And, of course, Hippocrates, known for the Hippocratic Oath, but credited with separating religion and magic and superstition from medicine and just creating, like, a medical practice.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, but Xena did it.
Of course.
And he wrote it down.
You can see in the temple, like, it features imagery associated with the Hippocratic Oath and with like, medical licenses in general. The sword with the snake.
I'm surprised they didn't have actual snakes crawling around because it's so dirty in there.
I've seen this episode so many times, I've never noticed that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like these more subtle, you know, shout-outs to that. Whereas, when Hippocrates is like, I'm going to make an oath. You're like, we got it. You created ER, the show. Yes. Fine.
So they walk out of the temple.
Yes.
And I love how Gabrielle, I know she was stabbed in her side, all right, so she should have this, but it was so funny how she had the bandage, like, taped around her abs to hide them.
Aww. And it's sweet, abs. The way she's, like, holding on to Xena and, like, kind of hobbling out. And she starts telling Xena about her trip to, or she says it's a dream that she had when she was, quote, on the other side. So it sounds like she went to the Elysian Fields, which doesn't happen, whatever, later. We'll see. We'll whatever. I don't get
She
how
should go to Amazon Afterlife.
Well, whatever.
Which is weird because I feel like she should go. They should also go to the Elysian Fields. I don't know.
Who knows?
They're all great.
Who cares? Anyway, she has my favorite line in the thing where she says that maybe it's something about the delivery where she's just like, I saw my grandmother and my uncle Moropes. And it makes me laugh every time. It's just the name, my uncle Moropes, just makes me LOL for no reason whatsoever. I think it's just the way she says it.
I want to know more about Uncle Moropes.
Yeah.
I'm fanning that he's her gay uncle.
Oh.
Sure.
The previous only gay in the village. Poor Moropes.
And my favorite thing is that she's like, and I saw Talus there, which was like such a weird, like I never picked up on that, obviously, because I was like, whatever, I don't care about that guy from that episode. But like, LOL, Talus.
Final shout out to Talus.
It's important.
It's like the last line of the entire season.
I think it's specific.
Interestingly,
because
it's also
the boyfriend of the week had the hair.
The boyfriend of the week had the hair, and also they had that scene together where they were kind of doing this stuff. They went to that place to
they
just
had
help.
a meet cute over doing field medicine.
And
it was
like
the first to
manner.
praise the bedside manner.
Bedside manner.
Yeah, so okay, the ghost of Talus.
Luckily,
I'm pretty sure he's never going to be mentioned again. Okay, good.
Oh, so good. Oh, it's just such a good sequence.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I love that CPR drama. You just gotta love it. You just must. This episode and Callisto of the first season are on the like fan voted list on, I feel like, the big Xena sites, wish.org, of the best episodes of Xena, like the top 10 or maybe it's 12. I think the only
12.
two from the first season are Callisto and
No Greater Good.
I don't think that was on there.
Lord Seltzer was a demerit.
But this one, and I honestly feel like this one, the whole thing is great, but I truly feel like it's the emotional reaction at the end that puts it in the top 10.
I mean, it's a very strange episode.
Yeah.
Because you could almost describe parts of it as boring. I think it's very well done and well directed and kind of compelling when you're actually watching it. But it's so simple.
Right.
Yeah, it's relatively plotless. It's just save this guy.
Right.
Now let's save these two guys at once. Whoa!
Yeah, and if that's not something that you're interested in, then I can see that it would be boring.
Yeah, but it is, it's striking. I do think it is like a very bold artistic statement to say like, Xena can do this too. You know, we've seen Xena do the melodrama and the kind of, campy screwball comedy. And yeah, so I feel like this is a new genre that it's opening up, the medical genre. We won't really go back to this one, unlike the others, but I think it's really showing just how far you can take these characters and the different kinds of scenarios you can put them in. And yeah, I applaud it, even if I'm like, okay, ready to move on to something else.
Yeah. So
it is weird as a finale. My sense from my researching is it was never intended to be the season finale. It clearly ended up in this position, especially since it aired in July. It had those 3 months in the editing room where they haggled with the network over various editing decisions. I don't necessarily feel that it functions as a true ending, though I do love the dramatic climax, and that does in many ways feel like an emotional climax to the season, seeing Xena open up like that, which you didn't even really see in Callisto. Like, this is a full breakdown.
I think I agree with that.
But at the same time, Callisto was just such a huge episode. Like, it felt big in every way, whereas there's something very small and intimate about is there a doctor in the house.
I think it's the themes of the episode, especially in relation to Xena and Gabrielle and their journeys, that make it a interesting season finale, going by what we have set up throughout season 1.
I don't know how it was like within the fandom, within the press, or whatever, but like just looking at it now, I'm like, I can see how they would put it as a season finale because of the tension that possibly Gabrielle was going to be killed. Like, Xena's not going to be killed. So in the greater good, you're like, she's not going to be killed. Like, there's 3 more episodes. But here, because she's a sidekick, and while she was wonderful,
You're right.
there is still that tension that maybe she could be killed.
Her name isn't in the main credits.
Her name is in the credits, and then
Yeah.
the same thing happened in the X-Files with Gillian Anderson, even, like, because of, like, their pregnancy or whatever, when she got abducted, like, there was a chance that Mulder would get a new partner for the rest of the show.
Wow.
Because he's the star.
Sure.
Right. I agree. So did Chris Carter, so there.
Yeah, in a way that's kind of that shift between like plot-driven storytelling in which, the characters are replaceable, kind of the Law and Order model, versus character-driven storytelling, where what you're coming back for week after week is to see the interplay between Gabrielle and Xena.
Yeah.
In which case, you obviously can't kill Gabrielle.
Right.
Yeah. So thankfully,
Never.
she's back. So
Yay.
it's all good. Is there anything else to say about this episode or the other episode or the whole season?
Yeah.
Because we're done with season 1.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
Feels weird.
I know.
Well, there is something just really moving about seeing like the growth of the show from, those early days to kind of its fully developed self. And we might I guess we're not even really there yet at the end of season 1. Like there's still a ways to go. But I feel like season 1 represents a necessary series of steps that the show had to take to get to that place where it can begin to make these like bolder, bigger artistic choices.
Yeah. I mean, I know we have gone week by week discussing all these episodes. It's crazy, but to me, it goes pilot, greater good, Callisto, this ending. There's 4 episodes for me in this season. I'm not kidding you. And it's legit because they're the most, emotionally invested about the characters specifically.
Right.
These big
and the
sweeping-
themes. Yeah. I was really struck on our whole rewatch by episode 3, like Dreamworker. I felt like that episode was like, here's everything that we're going to talk about in episode 3.
Yeah, but Gabrielle's in her old outfit, so it didn't count.
I know, but it was still these issues of violence and Gabrielle being confronted with violence and being with Xena, and what does that mean for her going forward? And, for Xena, it's like, am I going to get this person killed? Or what am I, like, doing to this woman by having her travel with me? And at this point, she is a girl in a village, she's very innocent. And what is her relationship with Xena doing? Is it always good? Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but like Xena at one point later on the road says stuff like, I don't think that her being with me has always been good for her after many, many things have happened. But
and that too plays into that disparity between their 2 emotional reactions to the deaths. The fact that Xena breaks down, that Xena can't handle it. Like it shows that there is maybe for Xena something almost like an unhealthy dependency, whereas for Gabrielle it's much healthier. Yeah,
she's susceptible to addiction.
She is.
So
it's all these themes are so juicy and important, and the show is just gonna keep building on them as we go forward. But they do a really good job in season 1 of setting them up, and the show takes a lot of interesting steps to find its footing and to really find itself. And I am a completist, so I think that anybody starting this show, you need to watch it all. Even though
you do.
That's just how I feel.
I'm just saying, it's a trying period maybe between
there's always,
the early ones.
Like, there's always something good in every episode, even in Silly Death Mask.
But I feel like these are necessary missteps. Even the trying periods, they're about trying things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are successes, sometimes there are failures.
And I think there is just something really emotional about seeing the show like graduate.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's stepping up, and season 2 is going to offer it all sorts of new problem-solving opportunities.
We were watching Is There a Doctor in the House and kind of let Hulu keep on a rolling, and went into season 2, and immediately the stuff that was going on, I just started skipping around the room, like excited to talk about it, because it just starts off being so good. So we're really getting to the
heart of the show.
Yeah. So it's
We're very
exciting.
excited. Well, we did it. We did season 1, and gosh, I just want to kind of take a moment to thank all you guys for listening to us talk about Xena.
I know. People are listening.
I know, it's
like,
crazy.
Some people are listening.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
thank you guys for sticking with us, and I wanted to give particular shout outs to Mitch, Troy, and Karen, and the Xena Watch group, and also the Xena Movie Campaign, who kind of put us on their Facebook, and then we got our little Facebook page got some action. That's crazy because I don't know how to Facebook, so that's kind of
everybody's been really supportive since the beginning.
Yeah,
and promoting us to other people. And
thank you to anybody who's been talking to us on Twitter and people who have been listening but not even talking to us, but hey, you have been listening, so thank you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And anybody who's left us reviews like on iTunes and stars, like we really appreciate that stuff, and we're just really glad you guys like it and love Xena as much as we do.
That's the most important.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's not a competition. Come on.
Yeah, so we're excited to tackle season 2 with you.
Alright.
Stay tuned.
Cool.
Yeah.
So all the things Vera just mentioned, please follow us on Twitter at XenaWarriorPod. On iTunes, you can subscribe and rate and leave a review. We always appreciate those. For non-iTunes people, we're on any Android thing, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. Look it up there. We're everywhere.
Tumblr?
We're on Tumblr, XenaWarriorPodcast.tumblr.com, and the Facebook group Xena Warrior Podcast. Those 2 places, we're doing lots of fun stuff in addition to what we're talking about here. So come look for more goodies on those places. Yay!
The power.
The passion.
The podcast!